Hi, today I'm casting on a summer top. I decided I want to make one more summer top for this season, and it's supposed to be a basic because in the beginning of the summer I self-drafted my lobster topster and I published a pattern for it, and that top is very color work in your face, very loud, and I just want to have a basic white top that I can throw on with anything. And I do want to work with a pattern this time just because, I don't know, I don't feel like thinking about it too much. I just want to whip out a quick project so I can still put it on in the season. The yarn I got for it is the Knitting for Olive Pure Silk in the color Undyed, and with that I'll be making the Ivy top by petiteknit. This is one of the recommended yarns to hold it double-stranded, and I have made a swatch. I have made very many swatches actually. I've already unraveled it so I can't show you, but it was a long process until I got to the decision that I'll be making the Ivy top, which is kind of ridiculous because I think that's one of her newer patterns and I see it showing up everywhere. But basically the story goes like that. I wanted to make a basic summer top, so I looked through all of my favorites and I decided I would probably make the cloud top because that has been in my favorites for a long time. It's also a basic. It looks relatively similar and I was like 90% sure that was going to be it, so I ordered the yarn for it thinking, okay, I can still decide on something else if I feel like it, because the Pure Silk is a recommended yarn for so many summer tops, so it shouldn't be too hard to find a pattern. And then until the yarn arrived, I had stared at the cloud top for so long that I thought maybe I don't actually like it that much. I think I just like it on her a lot. I think with the way her body is proportioned, it looks really cool, but I just feel like on me, I would find it a little bit too boxy. So then I thought, okay, well, whatever, I'll find a different pattern. I have so many of my favorites. I have a yarn that is suitable for literally every top ever. So how hard can it be? And I did some going back and forth, and eventually I decided I want to make the camisole number 9 by my favorite things knitwear, which is the most basic summer top that is out there. It looks very store-bought, and you knit it holding a single strand of the Pure Silk. I think there's other recommended yarns, but the Pure Silk is definitely in there. And I mean, it's a basic summer top, how hard can it be? So I made a swatch because I always make a swatch because my gauge is always off. So I made my swatch and I could immediately tell that my gauge was not anywhere close to what the pattern asked for. I think I was missing 1/3 of the stitches in my 10cm swatch. My idea was a little bit to like crank this project out in a short amount of time so I can still put it on while it's warm. And the camisole number 9 being knitted with just one strand of the Pure Silk would probably take quite long. So ultimately I decided there's just too many factors working against it and I should do something else. And then I did some more staring at different patterns. I was looking at the Audrey top for a long time too. I've had that in my favorites for a while as well. And then in the end I had narrowed it down to either the Audrey top or the Ivy top, and I just decided on the Ivy top. Last night I bought the pattern, so I can't do any more going back and forth, and I cast on just now, so it's settled now. I'm making the Ivy top. I've already read through the pattern and I always like go through it in the beginning and I highlight all of the numbers that correspond to my size. I'm making the size large. Especially the beginning is very straightforward. You just work stockinette for the first few rows around the neck and then you do some short rows for the back. So let's do that.
Do you punish yourself like me, though you know it's not what you need? I wonder if you feel like I do, doing all you can to be true.
It is a few hours later and I ended up right here. This has been quite nice. It's working up very quickly. So that's what my little top looks like right now. It's mainly stockinette for now, so this was just worked in the round for the neck, and then for the short rows you placed these little markers. So this is my beginning of front marker. It's in the middle of the back, as it is I think all of the time when you work short rows, and then these are the little shoulder stitches on the sides. I actually think the design is quite pretty the way the increases are next to these shoulder stitches, and this shoulder section just goes like has these lines going down from the stockinette part. I think that looks really cool. My tension is very tight on this because I knitted quite a bit of swatches for this project just because I was going back and forth about what to make so many times. And I'm working on the recommended needle size, which I don't think I've ever done before with a pattern. So I am on 4mm needles, but I am pulling my yarn crazy tight, like a lot tighter than I usually would. But I feel like for the Pure Silk, if I'm knitting it in stockinette like that and I actually want to have a result where there's no like little holes in the fabric, which I really don't want for a top, I have to pull it tight like that. Like I have to kind of go against what I naturally would do for my tension. I think if I work with a wool or a merino or something, it doesn't really matter because the yarn just automatically kind of fills up the little gaps, but the silk definitely doesn't do that. And I think so far when I've worked with silk or generally yarns that aren't as stretchy and don't react to blocking that much, I've usually done like lace projects or projects where the size didn't really matter a ton. So yeah, I swatched quite a bit, and no matter what needle size I used when I knitted with my normal tension, I just never really liked the result. So I settled on just pulling my yarn very tight, which wasn't always the most fun for the short rows and isn't the most fun for the increases, just because it's kind of hard to get my needles in there. But I really like the result. I think it looks very like neat and polished. So I think what I'll do now is I'll work some more of the increase rounds, just the entire round, not short rows. And then I'll already be somewhere here around this area, I guess. So I can start creating the armhole. And yeah, I guess let's do that. It doesn't sound too difficult.
It's not hard to get lost, at least not for me. I've certainly found.
I now hit the point where I'm supposed to be done doing just increases in the round, and now I'm supposed to separate the front and the back and bind off the shoulder stitches here. And I looked at my top, or the little bit of top that I have at this point, and I thought that looks awfully small for some reason. So I put it on some scrap yarn and I tried it on, and it is awfully small. I also measured my gauge and I am again off gauge. I can't deal with it anymore. This week has been so annoying with getting gauge with this yarn because I don't know, I think I knitted like 5 swatches this week, and the last one I was finally happy with. I was on 3.75mm needles, which is an insane size that nobody uses, and I was able to hit gauge for this top, which is 20 stitches times 28 rows in 10 by 10 centimeters in stockinette. And then when I started, I realized I only have one 3.75mm needle that just randomly showed up, because that's just not a needle size people have around, I guess. And it's 60 centimeters long, so I wouldn't have really been able to do the cast on here in the round. So I thought, okay, I'll just go back to the 4mm needle, because I have done a swatch on 4mm needles before that as well, and I kind of hit gauge. I was like almost there. So I thought, okay, I'll just do 4mm needles and I'll pull the yarn a little bit tighter, and that should be fine. I should be able to hit gauge like that. And well, now I kind of overcorrected, I guess. So I pulled the yarn too tight, and I'm now at 24 stitches times 34 rows for the 10 by 10 centimeters. So my gauge is actually too tight, which means that this is actually too small. Yeah, I don't really know where to go from here. It doesn't look that much too small. I think on the picture her shoulders aren't much longer than this. They also go to this like bone here, but I guess mine could, like, I would prefer them to be wider, definitely. So now there's 3 things I could do, I guess. The first, and probably the thing that I know I should do, I should unravel, start over on the 4mm needle. I think I'm sticking with that, and just not pull the yarn quite as tight, in hopes that that would kind of give me the right gauge, and I could just knit the pattern the way it's written on the right gauge. The second option would be to pivot to doing a different size, like the extra large, for example, in hopes that, because that has more stitches, obviously, that would make the top a little bit bigger and then kind of fit like the large was supposed to fit. The issue with that is that I don't think it'll be enough. I skimmed the pattern, and I think at this point I'm supposed to have 6 stitches more than this and 2 rows more than this for the extra large, which would help me a little bit, but not to the extent that this would fit like the large. And I mean, there are larger sizes than that even, but obviously I would have already had to do something different at the cast on, so I couldn't really make sensible adjustments to the pattern to get to these sizes now. And the third option would be I just kind of go my own route and I add some more increases here until I'm happy with the size of it, and then just adjust the pattern as I go to fit my body, which for this pattern that is really not very complicated wouldn't be that hard to do, but also I kind of don't want to. I don't know, I just wanted to get a pattern and knit a top to pattern that I don't have to think about. I've been self-drafting quite a bit recently, doing a lot of math and figuring things out. It is about 24 hours later and I indeed figured out what to do, so this is what I showed yesterday. And at first, my first instinct was to go and figure out the math to knit this off gauge, but it was a little bit complicated because my stitch and my row gauge were off by different amounts and also different amounts of centimeters. So I didn't really know how to best fix this with these like raglan increases. So yeah, I just decided that yes, I could just continue and do some more increases until I feel like it sits on my body the same way it does in the pattern, but then I would have like totally straight off what I have in the pattern and would have just followed the picture essentially. So that all sounded a little bit too complicated for me for knitting a basic easy summer top. So I decided to just cast on again, and I just grabbed 2 different balls of yarn and kept the first iteration in case I need it again. And this is where we are right now. So I'm at the same point now that I was yesterday. And I just measured my gauge and it hits it pretty much exactly. Depending on where I measure it, I'm sometimes like off by a stitch or a row, but not comparable to what my first try looked like. And it's also a lot bigger, just visually already. I'm not gonna try this on. I'm just gonna assume this is fine. It should fit me. And well, there was some drama involved in that too. So I'm going to tell you about that while I unravel my first one, because now I've decided I don't need it anymore. I'm happy with what I came up with. Basically, I started the second try and it worked out well. I was knitting, vibing, I don't know. And then right after I had done all of the short rows, I realized that I had 1 too many stitches, and I tried to figure out where that came from, and then I realized I had accidentally done 1 too many increases because I had increased after the beginning of round marker. The beginning of round marker is in the middle of the back, and you do the increases here on the shoulder seams. So I had just, you know, in my mind while I was not that focused, seen a stitch marker and done an increase where there wasn't supposed to be one. So First I just laddered the increase down, and I just thought, okay, I'll like seam that part in the back and nobody will ever know. And I continued knitting, so I was at the same point I'm at now. And then 2 things happened. First of all, I realized that my stitches around the part where I had laddered down the increase kept shifting around a little bit and making the gauge kind of uneven, and it looked a bit ugly and it made me a little bit upset to already have a mistake in it if I'm just starting out. And then I measured my gauge again and I was still off gauge, not by quite as much, and that time my gauge was too loose actually, but like by 1 or 2 stitches, and my row gauge was also slightly too loose. So that was just 2 points where I was like, okay, I'm not necessarily happy continuing with either of those problems. Like maybe with one of them I would have figured something out, but both of them was just too much for me. So I unraveled back to the point where I had made the mistake with my increase, and I just worked on from there. And now I am finally at a point where I'm happy with it and the gauge is working. I don't know, I didn't expect there are so many issues with the gauge on this yarn. I've used it once before for my poet scarf, and I really enjoyed the yarn a lot, which is why I got it for this top. And I didn't do a gauge swatch for my poet scarf because, well, it was a scarf and I didn't really care if it was a little bit bigger or smaller than what the pattern called for. So I never tried to meet anybody else's gauge with this yarn. So I think it's more my issue than it is the pattern's issue, definitely. Also, I realized while unraveling the first iteration of the second try, wow, that it's kind of annoying to unravel things that you knit double-stranded. I mean, obviously I've knitted things double-stranded before and I've unraveled like smaller parts of them, but I don't think I've ever unraveled such big parts of something I was knitting double-stranded. And I don't like it, because now what do I do with all of this yarn? Do I just like roll it up into a third separate ball while it is like stuck together like that? Or do I separate all of it and then roll it onto the ball it came from? I don't know. I did that and it took a long time. Okay, I kind of did it. So I'm gonna roll this back up and then I'm gonna start on the back.
Have you waked to a season changed? Did a moment coming now rearrange? I wonder if you'd say that you're the same, doing all you can to keep sane. It's not hard to get lost, at least not for me. I've certainly found
Okay, I'm done with the back panel, and this is where we're at right now. So this is still the front. It's just a couple of rows I did for the neck, and then I started working short rows in the back, which go until like here, and then it was just a straight section down there, and then I worked some increases now, which are these, and I'm guessing it should be pretty much long enough to connect here for the body later on. I am meeting gauge, which is very exciting. And now for the front section, I basically work it the exact same way. So I'm going to pick these stitches here back up that are on hold right now. I should really get a different yarn to put my stitches on hold. I've been using this, which just showed up in my stash, and it's an acrylic yarn in this neon green color, and I just knew I would never use it for anything really. Anyway, so I'm going to pick these stitches back up here. And then I'm going to work it the exact same way I already worked the back. So this is also the same amount of stitches. I'm going to just work this straight section for the same amount of rows I needed for the back. And then I'm going to make these increases here. And then it's already time to connect it around. So I guess I'm going to have to cast on some stitches here and just work the rest of the top in the round, which is very easy. So it's a very quick pattern with very little detail, because you basically just leave all of the edges the way they are. This is just my long tail cast on edge. I did nothing special to it. And then for the sides here, for where I worked straight and for the increases, you just leave that as it is as well. You don't work like any I-cord or any finishings on it. And I think for the cast off for the body part, it's also just a regular cast off, and then you just leave it. I'm also really happy with where this section here ended up, this shoulder part that you just work in stockinette from the neck down. Because if you remember the first iteration, it kind of sat over here, like before that bone, and now it's long enough to cover that bone here. So also any straps I might wear underneath should be covered with this as well. But I guess I'm gonna see how it looks once I've worked the front, because I guess these stitches will also be pulled down a little bit. But yeah, let's do the front.
Have you walked your time in a bind, not knowing how to put the past behind? I heard that if you stare, man, you could go blind. But is there something still there to find?
I just got done with the front, and this is what it looks like. I just put it on some scrap yarn as well to try it on, because I want to see if I need to make any adjustments for the underarms, but I don't think I will, because it looks pretty good. Like it's hitting about here, and then I'm supposed to cast on 5 more stitches under the arms and connect in the round, which I think should give me enough space. I really like the way the neckline looks. The only thing I'm not that happy with at the present moment is, I don't know if you can see that well, but these little gaps here, which happen from my short row turns. I don't know if that is like my fault, or if that just is what happens when you do short rows. I have knitted them before on sweaters, but usually with a fluffier yarn. I don't think I've done short rows on a garment with like silk or cotton or whatever type of fiber that wouldn't like automatically fill up the gaps. If it still bothers me by the end, I think I'll just take some yarn on the backside and like kind of sew these sides of the stitches together to prevent this little gap from happening, and then I think it should be fine. Other than that, it looks pretty good. I tried to pull my yarn a little bit tighter on this flat section and on the back as well than I did for the beginning here, because I was a bit afraid that my gauge would change to be looser when I'm knitting flat, but I think I've kept it pretty consistent. It looks pretty good. So now all I need to do is connect in the round, and then it's basically just knitting stockinette in the round until I'm done. A bit afraid of the trajectory of this project now, because I whipped this up so quickly. This was like 3 days of work, I guess, and I mean there was some gauge issues and starting over in the middle of that as well. So this was really, really fast, and now I'm a bit worried that once I connect in the round and I have like no more goals to move towards except finishing, and I have such a big section where I just do boring things, that my interest in this project will fade a little bit and I won't be able to finish it for a while. But I'm hoping I can power through this and maybe even put it on by the end of the week. It was very nice to sit at the park to knit while the weather was good outside, but well, I came home and I unraveled quite a big part of my top. I worked some centimeters in the round and then I put it on scrap yarn to try it on again, and it was quite a bit too wide. On the picture where you see her wearing it, it is definitely tighter than that, and I wanted a bit of a tighter fit. So I decided to go back and unravel because I just knew I wouldn't be happy with the final result if I just kept going. And well, I didn't really know where to best take these extra stitches away, because my first instinct was to just cast on less stitches under the arm, but I was hesitant to do so because of the way the armhole looked, because I already felt like the armhole was as tight as I would want it. Like, I wouldn't really want to go any smaller for the armhole, and I actually did 2 rows of stockinette stitch after the increases here to make the armhole a little bit bigger. So I knew I wouldn't want to take stitches away from here and make it like tighter here. That would just mean it would like right up and that part would be smaller. And I didn't want that. So it was clear I would have to take these stitches away from the increase section here. And well, there wasn't really any other way to do that except go back to up here essentially, because this part is just worked flat in stockinette, and then there's increases here, and then you connect in the round. So if I want to take some of the increases away here, that would mean I also lose length, or I would have to continue in stockinette stitch for quite some centimeters here. And neither of those options seemed good to me because, well, for the first one, I didn't want to take away any length. I was happy with the length of it, just not with the circumference. And for the second option, I thought it would just look weird to have like a straight line here and then have increases and then have a straight line again and then connect in the round. I thought it would look kind of awkward. So I didn't really want to do that either, and I ended up frogging until here where I had done this straight section. So now I can just work the straight section a little bit longer, and then start the increases and then just work less increases. I'm not exactly sure where the mistake happened. The top is definitely a bit wider than it is supposed to be according to the pattern. I did measure my gauge again and I am slightly off, so I understand that it's a bit wider, but for the amount that it is wider, it was like I think 5 or 6 centimeters. I don't really get where that came from. The math in the pattern is also correct, obviously, so I don't know what happened there. So this project has really turned out to be a little more frustrating than I was anticipating. I just wanted to make a quick summer top, and now, I mean, it's still quick, admittedly, but there's just a lot of back and forth involved that I was not expecting and that I'm not happy about, obviously. So I'm just gonna, well, do all of this again and do all of the back again, and maybe then it'll fit better.
Have you set a flame to your disguise, known only to show your eyes? And if you hear me inside this sound, I don't wanna let you.
This quick, easy summer project is testing my patience. I knitted to the point where I would now connect in the round, and I measured my gauge, and my stitch gauge is perfect again. My row gauge is, however, a little bit off, so it seems like I can either get the stitch gauge perfect and the row gauge a little bit off, or the row gauge perfect and the stitch gauge a little bit off, which is fun. This already includes 2 more rows than what the pattern says, but it is still quite short. I still feel like the armhole should be a little bit deeper. So now I'm not sure whether I should just add 2 or 4 rows underneath here, or whether I should unravel all of the increase section again and add more rows there. It is a day later, and I obviously followed my own advice and unraveled, because I just know if I don't do it right, I'm just gonna be upset about it and I'm not gonna like the finished item. So this is where I'm at now. Same point I was already at like 7 times. So I omitted 3 increase rows, which means I have 6 less stitches for the front and the back, but it looks pretty good. It kind of almost follows the shape of the sports bra I'm wearing here. And now I have to connect in the round like so. And I am unsure about how to do that, because in the pattern I'm supposed to cast on 5 extra stitches under each arm. And I don't know if I want to cast on 5 extra stitches, because I was at this point before and I did connect in the round before and I did cast on the extra 5 stitches. And I feel like last time I was here, it looked very similar to this time I'm here. And then the 5 stitches was way too much. So now I am unsure whether I should actually do 5 stitches or whether I should just do 3 and see how that looks and go back if it doesn't look good, or if I should do even less, maybe just 1. I think at this point, or earlier, I didn't want to do that because the armhole wasn't deep enough for me to want to omit any of those stitches. But I think now the armhole is deep enough where that wouldn't really matter, so I would be fine just casting on one extra stitch. So now I have to think about which option would make me the least mad if it's not working out. I mean, I don't know, so in any case I might have to go back. I obviously like tried measuring this and myself and stuff, but I feel like it's very hard to actually measure how wide this is going to be while it's still on the needles on scrap yarn and not like in the context of fabric around it. So I don't know. I think I'm just going to cast on one and call it a day and connect in the round. I'm going to knit 2 or 3 rounds and try it on again. I think that's what I'm going to do. I think that's the smartest route to go. Right? It's funny, this was supposed to be such a short, cozy little video where I just knit this top and run into no problems at all. But I keep running into problems. And like I lost all hope for this. I'm connecting in the round now, but I'm not assuming that that will be the last time I'm connecting in the round. I am almost certain I will have to go back and unravel again. Like I wouldn't be surprised about that at all. So I guess we'll see if maybe I can have a miracle this time. I already have stitch markers everywhere in my knitting to mark all of the different sections so I can unravel back to there. So I got to the point where it was the first time I unraveled the body. This is my tiny little bobbin I have left over from all of the yarn I unraveled. And well, this is my top and I'm still not happy with it. I wish I was joking, but I'm not. I actually don't know how many times I've reknitted which part of this. It's insane. I thought this would be quick. You can maybe already see the issue. It's not the circumference this time, even though that is still a little bit wide. It is this here. There's too much fabric here. I think, I'm not entirely sure, but I think that might be because I only cast on one stitch here on the underarm. So these increases have to bridge the gap between the front and the back panel mostly. There's only one stitch to connect them, while originally they would sit more like this. So there would be more of a straight line down here, and this gap would be bridged by additional stitches cast on. And I think that's where this weird puckering here is coming from. So I have 2 choices now. Choice 1, I unravel until like about here where I set up my increases. I work the increases again. I work less increases because first of all, if I am doing it again anyways, I'm going to make the circumference a tiny bit tighter as well, but also so that I can cast on more stitches on the underarm here. And that way it should fit me better. That would be option number 1. The other option would be to just unravel everything and start over on something else. It does sound tempting. My only problem with that is that I have tried so many gauge swatches before I started this project because I wanted to knit different patterns originally and I could never get gauge. So the fact that I can't get this to fit me, it might be because of the way this pattern is designed that it just doesn't work well with my body, but also it's because my gauge is confusing and complicated. So that issue won't necessarily be solved by knitting something else. I think I'll unravel until here where I would have to pick up again, and then I'll see how I feel about that. But I'm so done. I don't want to unravel things anymore. I'm so tired of unraveling. You're not gonna believe this, but at last, I'm done. This is it. I'm keeping this tray. This is what it looks like. I think this is about what it's supposed to be like. This is the one. I don't know why this was so complicated, but this is the one. So what I've done is I've worked the neck to pattern, I've worked the short rows to pattern in the back, and then there is a section that just goes straight back and forth. I have worked that section a little bit longer than what it is in the pattern. I'm going to measure how much longer exactly, and I'm going to put that in my Ravelry notes. But I think for my body, the space between my neck and the widest part of my bust is quite long. So this section is longer for me than it is for most other people. I know that. So I think that is what went wrong the first time I knitted this up. And I think that's why my armhole originally sat very far up here. The only thing I'm still not 100% happy with is this here. I feel like there's a lot of space here, like it's a lot less tight here than it is around my bust, but I don't know how I would fix that, because obviously there's nothing that is like pulling these stitches outward, because there's just a hole there. So I think that's just going to be the way it is. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do some more shaping, because in the pattern this top is just worked in the round until it's bound off. So there's no additional shaping to it, you just add length at this point. But for my body, I feel like I would like it to hug my curves a little bit more, because for me, my widest part is my hips, and then my smallest part is my waist, and then my bust is somewhere in between. So if I just keep working straight down from here, then it's going to be a little bit loose at the waist, which I don't necessarily even mind that much, but it's going to be its tightest at the hips, and I don't think that'll look very good. So I want to do some decreases now to fit my waist better, and then I'm going to do quite a few increases and end the top about like where mid-rise jeans would fit. And that way I think it should be the same ease all around my body. We're in a new room because I went on vacation, but I pretty much finished. I am not entirely done, I think. To tell you the story, while we were driving here, there was like a 7-8 hour drive. About 6 of those I just knitted on this, I did nothing else. So I made quite a bit of progress, I think. This is the armhole, so when we left I was somewhere here, and then I did all of this in the car. The waist shaping on this looks insane, I don't know, but this is actually how my body is shaped. It does fit me, at least in that spot. I blocked this when we got here and it dried overnight. This is what it looks like now, and I'm not sure how happy I am with it, to be honest. I'm very happy with my waist shaping, that turned out pretty good. It fits me really well. I'm also happy that the blocking kind of prevented it from curling down here. It still flips up a little bit, which is normal for just a regular bind off in stockinette. And I think that's just part of the design of the edges all being unfinished, so I don't mind that at all. Before I blocked it, it was curling quite a bit, but now it's good. I still like the neckline a lot. The only thing I'm still not happy with is the armhole. It was okay right after I finished it, but with blocking, it stretched a bit in length and is now a bit deeper than I intended. The main problem with it is that I still have the bunching up of the fabric here, and I'm still not sure where that is coming from. I think for all of the other spots on this top, like up here or down here, they're just in the round, so the stitches kind of have something pulling on them from both sides, while here there's obviously nothing because there's a hole for my arm. So the fabric kind of can just do whatever, and it creates this weird line here. I think maybe for me it would have had to include a dart or something to fix that. I am thinking maybe I should try to crochet a little picot edge border around it, just because I don't really mind that. I know that the unfinished edges are part of the design, but I feel like for the armhole it wouldn't really bother me if they were a little bit different. Obviously this is the cast on edge, and then this down here is the bind off edge, so I feel like they look a little bit more neat because they have these knit V-shaped stitches on top of it. But the armhole, I don't know, it just doesn't look that pretty. I'm kind of unhappy with this project, to be honest. It's not that the fit is incredibly bad, but it's not amazing, and I spent so much time trying to make this fit me, even though this was just supposed to be a simple stockinette summer top. It doesn't even have finishings. It should have been so quick, and it's only being made worse by the fact that every time I open Instagram there's like 1,000 people there who have just finished theirs, and it looks great on all of them and seems to fit them, and they don't report any issues with it. So either I'm shaped like a completely weird person, or I'm just too dumb to knit this, I don't know. Okay, I did some crocheting around the edges, so I added this picot row here and this one here, and it kind of fixed the issue a tiny bit, but not fully. I think right after I got done, it seemed to fit a bit better. I tried to skip more stitches on the front side than I skipped on the back side, and that kind of cinched it in a little bit here. And then I blocked it again, or at least these parts. I don't know how much it actually fixed in terms of this being too loose, because I mean I can kind of spread the fabric out in a way where you can't see it as much, but obviously if I move around you can kind of see where it folds. So that was it for my last update on this. I'm now declaring it a finished object, because I don't know how else I am supposed to fix this. And we're going to chat about the finished object and the pattern and the yarn a little bit. For the finished object, I am obviously not entirely happy with it, which is a bit frustrating because I've spent quite a lot of time trying to get this to be perfect and it still isn't. So I don't know how I feel about it. I think I won't get a lot of wear out of it anymore this season, just because it's getting kind of cold already. So I think it might be best to just put this into my closet and take it out next summer and see how I feel about it. For the yarn, I think I've mentioned that I've worked with it before and I've liked it. I wouldn't necessarily buy it again if it is a pattern where gauge really matters. I just spent so much time trying to gauge swatch. I think I went close to 10 gauge swatches before I started on one top. They went all for different tops. Some of them were for the same and me knitting with a different needle and a different tension and things like that. And still this top I didn't knit on my comfortable tension that I would naturally use. So the knitting experience for this also hasn't been amazingly fun to me. For the pattern, I've been thinking about it and I realized this is probably the first petite knit pattern that I've actually kind of followed. I mean, I did a lot of changes to the pattern, but I knitted a Sophie scarf and I think I just knitted that to picture. I just didn't buy the pattern because I kind of didn't see the point. And I swatched a bunch for some of her other patterns, but I haven't like completed one of her items really with the pattern in front of me. So this was my first real experience with petite knit kind of. As you can tell, it wasn't amazing. I wouldn't write off her patterns in general, especially because I know that a lot of people have had a positive experience with this specific pattern as well. I keep seeing people post their finished objects and they all look great and everybody seems to be happy about them. So I'm not entirely sure where this all happened for me. In the future, I probably wouldn't buy her tighter fitting patterns again. I don't think there is that many, but if I'm looking for a summer top, I might look somewhere else, just because I don't know how exactly she designs her patterns, but I have heard that they don't scale up for the larger sizes as well. And her body is obviously very like tiny frame and no curves. So I think for me, even though I'm not the largest or curviest person, this has just not really worked out. I don't know to what extent you can blame her for this issue here, because I also made a ton of adjustments to the pattern, but I would still say if I had just followed the pattern, it wouldn't fit my body the way I was imagining it after seeing the pictures of it. If that makes sense. In the comments, definitely tell me about if you had any finished object that you were unhappy about at first and then re-evaluated your opinion over time, or if you have any idea how I can keep this fabric from being so loose and bunching up here. As always, give this video a like and subscribe to my channel if you want to see me make more such things, and I will see you next time.